Hello and welcome to the Huddersfield Town preview show in association with Sportsbroker. I'm pleased today to be joined by former Town striker Iwan Roberts and the Examiner Stephen Chicken. How are you two both doing this afternoon?
Good, thank you. Good, thank you.
Good. Before we get into anything serious, I've been told that the first matter on the agenda, Ewan, should be a discussion of a famous game back in the day that you played in for Town against Bury, 4-0 down, I think it was, 4-4 at the end of the day. Do you want to give us your review of that game?
Well, you talk about highs and lows, Raj. It was an unforgettable game, and I still get reminded of it today by Huddersfield Town fans. As you say, 4-0 down after about 24 minutes. And I was speaking to you earlier, I just wanted the ground to open up and swallow it. Honestly, I just wanted to get out of Gig Lane because it looked as if it could be 8 or 9. But we got one back just before half-time where Chris Marsden crossed from the right-hand side. And it wasn't like Marsden, to be fair, because he was all left foot, but he put a good ball across the 6-yard box. And I just got in front of my defender, pulled one back, and at least I was thinking, well, at least I've done my job, at least I've scored. But we came out in the second half, and we were so determined. Obviously, Owen at half-time earned his money, to be fair, with the telling off, that's the term I'll use, that he gave us. Phil Starbuck scored two cracking goals, and I really enjoyed playing up front with Starby. And then just as we thought time was running out, a young Simon Ireland made a great run down the right-hand side and stood a great ball to the back post. And there was me to get my head onto it in front of, well, it must have been 3,500, 4,000 Town fans behind that goal. It was great scenes. It really, really was. Yeah. And as I said to you, I still get reminded of it. Probably one of the best games I've ever been in. At 4-0 down, believe you me, it was one of the worst games I've ever been involved in.
Stephen, I can't think of many other examples of 4-0s in that sort of sense. I think Newcastle did it against Arsenal at home. Yeah. But other than that, there's not many where that happens.
No, the only one I can think of is a two-legged Liverpool and Barcelona. But it's I think 3 you see now and then, but you don't get many 4s, do you?
No. You say is there any Town games other than that one that stick out particularly for you at all?
There is. Because I had a hard time when I first joined the club. I was a young lad. I was coming for a record fee at the time of 275 grand. How times have changed over the years with transfer fees. I was taking the place of Craig Maskell, who'd been magnificent at the football club, club legend. And I did feel the pressure, to be honest with you. And I got off to not the best of starts, but I think the game that sort of changed my Huddersfield Town career, we were playing Bradford away at Valley Parade. I think we had half the ground. We had the goal, we had the stand behind the goal where the tunnel is, and we had all down one side of Valley Parade. So we had magnificent support, being a local derby. And we were 2-0. We found ourselves 2-0 down at half time. I was thinking, here we go again. It is, isn't it? It is. and to get into the dressing room, you have to go down into that corner, right-hand corner. And, we were getting dogs abuse from Town fans, and rightly so. We knew what a big game it was. We knew that first half was nowhere near good enough. And in the second half, we came out once again. We came back, and I got both goals. And I think that got from being 2-0 down to coming back to 2-2 against our local rivals in such a big game. Scored two, I think there were 2 decent headers. And that's when I think I started slowly winning the Town faithful over. And I probably didn't look back from then on, to be honest. It was sort of halfway through my first season. And I think that's the game that stands out, as if that's the game that turned my Huddersfield Town career.
Yeah, we talk a lot about Terrier spirit at the club at the moment in time. It's something that we sort of used to embody what the club's all about and the ethos of everything. And those sort of afternoons and occasions seem as if, that's the reason why we do it. It's not something that's brand new or hasn't been at the club before. It's clearly something that's been the identity of Town for decades, or if not longer.
Absolutely. It comes from a solid fan base. I think it comes from a really close-knit dressing room with a great team spirit, which we had. We had some proper good lads in that dressing room. We had some experienced pros. We had some young lads. but we were really together. You know, we were good friends. We played hard. Believe you me, we partied hard as well. So and that sort of team bonding, whatever you want to call it, sort of, I think it carries you a long way. It really, really does. You get a feeling for one another, for your teammate. You want to do well for him. He wants to do well for you. Yeah. And back then, you know, it's one, if not, it's one of the best dressing rooms I've ever been involved in.
That's great to hear, Stephen. It's interesting actually listening to that, because the way that Iwan talks about that team is how the lads currently in the Town dressing room talk about the current side. Do you think that's probably one of the reasons why, you know, Iwan looks at that period so fondly, that the lads that are doing so well at the club now will likely do so a few years down the line at the current setup?
Yeah, of course. I mean, you know, it's the same as any workplace. If you're working with a good bunch of people that you get on with, and, you know, you feel like you're all in it together. I think especially in sport, obviously, where, you know, where the team ethos is so important. Of course, you want to, you know, these are memories that people are going to take through their careers, and you only get one crack at it, don't you? So you want to make the most of it while you can. And, you know, I think everyone can see that it isn't just lip service, because I think quite often, you know, it's kind of a sort of a bit of a lazy cliche that people will reach for, is, you know, how's the mood in the dressing room and all of this. And but I think with you know, we've said it throughout the season with Town, it seems to be genuinely true. And I think we've seen it a lot in results on the pitch recently, you know, coming back from behind to beat Premier League opposition in the FA Cup, really digging in to keep clean sheets against Blackburn and Nottingham Forest last two games as well. And, you know, a couple of, you know, coming from behind as well against Blackpool and Bristol City before that. You know, that it's been a really good run of results for Town, just looking at it on paper. But when you actually dig in and look at the games themselves, there's a lot to be proud of in this team. And, you know, I think those are the kind of results in those circumstances that you don't get unless there is genuinely that spirit in the team. Yeah,
of course. We're going to come on to Town present day in a second, but before we move on from Iwan's era, there's one question I wanted to ask you, and which might be correct or might not be. But while we're discussing Town strikers that were decent with their head, is it true that a certain Andy Booth cleaned your boots when he was in the academy here?
Yeah, Boothie was a young lad while I was at the club, coming through the youth team system with one or two others. And back then, I mean, I don't think they're allowed to do it these days, right? I don't think it's allowed that these youngsters who are learning their trade, they don't have to clean the dressing room, clean the baths, clean the toilets, clean boots. You know, and back then, I think each professional or each apprentice had 3 or 4 professionals that he had to look after. But it's not like nowadays where they had 20 pairs of boots to clean. You probably had 3. But yeah, Boothie was my apprentice. He was the one that got my kit out before every session. Took it to good old Nelly in the laundry so that it got washed, ready for the next day. But yeah, he weren't a bad boot boy, to be fair. And whatever he tells you, Raj, believe you me, he got a bloody good tip at Christmas.
Good. Well, next time he's on the show, we'll have to bring it up with him and speak to him. We'll have to get you both on together at some point, and that'd be nice. I'm sure people will enjoy that. But Stephen, as you were touching on, if we talk about Town's current form, how much have you got to see of Town this season, Ewan? Have you managed to keep up with our results and performances?
I've seen 1 or 2 games on the TV. I've seen highlights of some of your games, but obviously because of the work that I do, it's hard for me to. I saw the game at I keep calling it the Liberty, but it's the Swansea Cox Stadium. I saw that game back at the end of September. The game which I thought probably Swansea did deserve to win. They probably could have got more than the 1 goal that they scored. But you know, you look at where you finished last season, and you know, and where you are at the minute. I mean, you finished last season in 20th, 49 points. You've already got 40 points this season. So that tells me all I need to know. And I look at, I'm a big believer in statistics and analysing games and one thing or another. I know you and Swansea are possession-based teams. I know that that both believe in keeping the ball. You know, the stats possession wise from both teams are up there with the very, very best in the Championship.
Yeah, that's true. I think the possession is something that Carlos has been speaking about. Stephen, you were in the press conferences earlier with the head coach and Josh Koroma. Was there anything about the prep or Swansea themselves that either of those two let on to as far as preparation goes?
Well, Carlos sort of alluded to the fact that, Swansea actually changed their shape in the last game for the FA Cup for the first time this season. And I think that sort of has him wondering whether they're going to sort of stick to that shape or whether they're going to go back to what they've normally played. And I think he needs to be mindful that he needs to have something in his back pocket to cover a couple of different shapes. But I think he does that anyway. For instance, we talked about after Nottingham Forest, and he talked about how he picked Ollie Turton because it enabled him to either play a 4 or a 3, depending on how things unfolded. So I think Carlos is always kind of mindful of that. And against Blackburn, obviously the conditions were what they were. The ball was getting caught in puddles an awful lot. Town did struggle the first 15 minutes because they were trying to sort of pass through it. And eventually they had to sort of change shape to give themselves more of an out ball and change their approach there. So I think Carlos is sort of one of the big things that I would say he's learned over sort of his 18 months at Town is I think he's getting better and better at adapting to things in game. And I think he'll have something in mind for whatever Swansea throw against them. But the other thing was he said that he feels that Swansea's performances have been better than the results would suggest. Okay. That they're down in 17th, although league positions, as Town know and as Carlos pointed out, sort of are a little bit meaningless at the moment because everyone's played different numbers of games. But still, Swansea, having played sort of the fewest of anyone, down in 17th, they're on not a great run of form. They've lost all their last 3 in the league. But I think Carlos was trying to say, look, they're better than. Don't go thinking that this is a bottom half side. This is the team that were beaten in the playoff final last year. We need to take them seriously.
Yeah, is that a fair summation, Ewan? Because obviously that you look at the current form and it doesn't look the greatest on paper, but with Carlos saying that the performances have actually been better than that might suggest, is that true?
I was up at Middlesbrough going back a good few weeks now because as you said they haven't played in the league since Nottingham Forest beat them at home by 4. That was a bad performance, and it was a big game for Swansea. Steve Cooper going back with Nottingham Forest, and it was a comfortable afternoon for Forest, putting 4 past Ben Hamer in the goal. They're having one of those periods in the season which I think every club in the Championship goes through. I think every club in this division has a sort of a hiccup, a blip, but it's how you make that blip as short as possible. That's the. I mean, I think they won 1 in their last 7, including the loss to Southampton, the cup. That the win came away at Barnsley in South Yorkshire. They're conceding far too many goals. And I think the problem that Russell's got, I don't think he knows his best back 5 at the minute. Okay. And I think they will go back to a back 5. I think that's the way he's played all of the Championship games this season. They've lost Ethan Laird, who was on loan from Manchester United. He's a big loss. He offered so much going forward. I think they brought Cyrus Christie in from Fulham, who Swansea fans will hope will play as well as what Ethan did on that right hand side. But yeah, they had a slow start. They only won once in their first 8 games, but they were defensively solid. I think they kept clean sheets in 4 of those 8 games. I think in their first 12 games, they conceded 7 clean sheets. Mm-hmm. And that's the problem. They've only kept 2 in their last 9. Okay. They conceded 3 at home against Reading, which you look at the position Reading are in now. But they had a good side. On their day, they're capable of beating anybody in this league. I saw them at Coventry back in September. And they were outstanding, and that was the first defeat that Coventry had in their own stadium. They beat West Brom at home. They've beaten Huddersfield at home. They comfortably beat Cardiff in a massive game for the football club. They went to Bournemouth. And for half an hour, Bournemouth couldn't get a kick. But once they conceded that first goal, Bournemouth then went on and scored and put forward against them. But on their day, they're capable of playing some scintillating football.
Is the strength of the side then up front with Patterson and Perot? Is that where the team really comes alive in the final third?
I mean, if you can keep them quiet, you look at they don't score enough goals. I think the midfield three of Corey Smith, Matty Grimes, who I think is a tremendous player, probably one of the best midfield players in the young lad they got signed from Ipswich, who's done really well for Downs. They've only scored 1 goal between them.
Okay.
You know, Swansea have only scored 26 goals this season. I think 19 of them have come from the two boys that you've mentioned, Patterson and Piru.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I hadn't really didn't know much of Joe Piru until he signed. I think he scored 3 goals, for 1 for PSV and 2 at Rotterdam last season on loan. But he's been magnificent, mate. Honestly, his movement. He's not the biggest, but he's strong. He's got that little bit of nastiness. Scores all types of goals. And they've scored 19 goals between them. So if Huddersfield can keep those two quiet, then got a great chance of going on to win the game.
Yeah, that seems to be the trick, doesn't it, Stephen? With those two up front for Swansea, and obviously making the most of when you do have possession, because they keep the ball so well on the Russell Martin as well. It's an interesting one. It's one that we talked about a few weeks ago as well, with Blackburn and Forest. Huddersfield are in a unique position of having fulfilled all of our fixtures, and there's an element of good practice, and the health department deserves all their props for putting all the protocols in place and everything. There's a huge slice of luck in there as well, I'm sure. But Swansea are on the opposite end of that. They haven't played a league fixture since the start of December, and as you were saying before, they have so many games in hand, but they have the same amount of period to fulfill those in as Huddersfield do to play their game. So it's strange. Which position would you rather be in almost? Would you rather have the points on the board and having won the games and played them like Huddersfield, or would you rather maybe have them in your back pocket like Swansea do? It's an odd one to sort of get your head around, isn't it?
Yeah, I think you'd always rather have the points, to be honest. Like, I think if Town had lost the games that they'd played while others have been postponed, then we'd be saying, oh, look at these teams, they've got their games in hand. But the fact that Town have actually picked up the points is a positive, really. And you're right. Yeah. I think it is, I think it's a tough game. It's I'm not sure which way it goes in terms of, it's odd to have such an enormous gap between fixtures in a league season. So hard to know which way that's going to go. But I think you're right to sort of highlight the attacking threat that Swansea have. I think Pirot is, an exceptional finisher. He can he's one of those players who can sort of score out of seemingly nothing, and one of those
made the difference in that first game of this team.
And he's also one of those players from sort of what I've seen of him who like seems like he'll be having a quiet game and then suddenly he's scored and he'll get 2 kind of thing. So no, he's but also I think at the other end of the pitch, I've been looking at I always keep track of XG and things like that, and the Swansea game is the lowest XG Town have had, the reverse fixture, have had all season in the league. Okay. They only had an XG of 0.15. They really didn't create very much of real note against Swansea. Yeah. So I think there's an obvious sort of area for improvement there. I think we know that Swansea like to have the ball, whether they're home or away, and they like to keep possession. And it'd be interesting to see how Carlos goes about sort of tackling that this time around, and whether he tries what he tried last time and do it better, or whether he looks to do something else, because he has been changing up his shape quite a lot recently, to be fair.
Yeah, it's something that has been a feature of the Town selection. There's been a few more people being swapped in and out, and a little bit more unexpectedness about who's going to be in the starting 11, which is good to see, and shows the sort of strength and depth that the squad has this year. We saw that plenty at Burnley with Russell's making their first appearances, Nick Blockovich coming off the bench and playing really well as well in his first senior appearance of any kind. One thing that I wanted to touch on with you, Iwan, is I'm not sure if you're aware of this or not, but I'll fill you in. The club have done a ticket offer for this match, with it being the first home game of the season. Reduced tickets across the ground to £5, regardless of your age, regardless of where you sat, just to sort of encourage as many people as they can to get into the ground and get behind the lads, especially on the back of such a good run and the start of the new year, turning over a new leaf and all those sorts of things. How much of a difference does it make to your team, to your players, to have a huge support behind you, know that there's going to be a big crowd, and does that add a bit of good pressure? Is it encouragement? How does that go over for somebody who's preparing for a game?
I think all of those things, Rad, to be honest with you. I mean, we've all sort of experienced over the past 18 months with everything that's happened, playing games behind closed doors, no atmosphere, players having to generate their own atmosphere. And let's be honest, it's not the same. I think the players and the clubs have done so well to perform to the level that they've had when there's been no spectators in the stadium. But yeah, it just makes a world of difference. There's no better feeling when you're walking out that tunnel and you can see the stand opposite, chock-a-block. You can hear the atmosphere. And I think that's a fantastic gesture that Huddersfield have done. I was talking about it yesterday. I've got a podcast on the BBC with Ellis James and Danny Gavin, and we were talking about this gesture that Huddersfield have done, £5 a ticket for Swansea fans to go up and support their team. And Cardiff are playing in Bristol City next weekend. I think Bristol are charging £35 for away tickets. So hats off to Huddersfield Town for that gesture. And it's a great, and it is. Listen, you're better having someone sat in the seat for £5 than an empty seat. That someone not sitting there. So there should be an absolute bumper crowd even at the John Smith Stadium. And as I said, I don't get up too often, but I'm really looking forward to coming back tomorrow.
Good. I think everyone's excited to have you as well. It's an offer that's been extended, obviously, to Swansea fans. They've obviously taken that up in great number as well. They're not able to go and watch their own team at home, unfortunately, given the current restrictions in Wales. Is that something that you've had good feedback on from them? They're excited to come down in the thousands?
Honestly, they can't wait because, as you say, they've not played since the 11th. Yeah, they had a home game last week. I mean, they could go to the pub next door to the Swansea.com stadium and watch it, but they couldn't go into the stadium itself to see their team play. So yeah, I think they're excited, and I think they're excited with the whole project and the whole new feeling of they might be in a bit of a bad moment in the season, but I think they've got every belief and every faith in Russell Martin. And even though they've not won as many games and as many points as they would have liked, they're enjoying the football that they're seeing under Russell Martin. So I'm sure they will enjoy once again, even though they haven't had the best of times up in West Yorkshire. I think they've not won away at Huddersfield since 2008. I think only won once in their last 10 away games against Huddersfield. So it's not been the happiest of hunting grounds for.
It was 4-1 last season, 4-1 to Town last season here as well. So that feeds into that run of history. Stephen, something I wanted to touch on with you on the back of this offer and the crowd that's going to be at the John Smiths is you seem to really telling people that one of your first games covering Town was when they got relegated from the Premier League. That seems to be a favourite statistic of yours. With that in mind, is this one of the sort of the happiest and best atmospheres and healthiest you've seen the atmosphere around the club and the relationship between the fans and the fan base? Is this one of the sort of the peaks that you've had in your time covering Town so far?
I've been covering Town for 12 years, just not for the Examiner. They were one of my Yorkshire clubs, but yeah, my first game for the Examiner was that Palace away game, the relegation day. So sorry about that. Although I think we've established,
I don't think that was your fault.
No, it wasn't me. No, there wasn't.
We can blame you if you want,
but we'll leave that there. But no, I mean. Yeah, I think to be fair, obviously when I started at the Examiner, it was, it had been a really long, hard, difficult season for everyone, and things were quite fractious. There was, the takeover was rumbling on as well, which is always sort of a time of a lot of questions for fans, and going back to the Championship, and then obviously they had that terrible start to life back in the Championship, and. Last season it was behind closed doors. So, yeah, it's been a rough ride for fans last few years. I think it's fair to say. I don't think anyone at the club is sort of shying away from that. But I think everyone's sort of trying to push things in the right direction. People. There's been ups and downs with that as well, but. Yeah, I think at the moment it's a positive moment. Obviously, 7 games unbeaten in all competitions. Won an FA Cup game for the first time in 4 years
against Premier League opposition.
Premier League opposition from behind. So, you know, and you know, this crowd is going to be surely, I think, maybe the biggest crowd you've had since coming back to the Championship. I would
imagine so. It's definitely the highest gate of the season.
Yeah, it'll be close to it. So I think this is a chance to maybe get some of those fans who have maybe not been to the John Smiths for a few years. Oh, obviously, no one was there last year, but that maybe haven't been for a while, or maybe lapsed fans, or whatever it might be, to get a few of those fans into the ground and hopefully put on a performance to make people go, do you know what, we'll come back to this again. This was a lot of fun. It's actually fun watching Huddersfield Town now.
Yeah, I think the intention is obviously to put on a performance and have a bit of an occasion for people to enjoy, and hopefully that is the case for Town. Sorry, Ewan, the best to Swansea for the rest of the season, but not tomorrow, unfortunately. Thank you both for both of you for your time this afternoon, and I look forward to seeing you both tomorrow.
Brilliant, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much to the two of you, and thanks to Sports.
Thanks, boys. Thank you.